And we are live. What's going on, brothers? What's going on? It's another Friday night, and I want to welcome you all to another edition of Friday Night Live. I hope you guys are doing well. Oh, it's going to be a good show tonight. I got my man, the G with the PhD, the Green Gorilla, is going to be in the house, and we're going to chop it up. And we're going to talk about black men, and we're going to talk about foreign policy. We're going to talk about the failures of U.S. foreign policy. Y'all know what time it is. Y'all see the thumbnail. Afghanistan, 20 years later. Oh, yes, my brothers, 20 years later. And I want to give a shout out to all you guys who have served or are serving in the U.S. military, you guys who are in the Navy, you are in the Marines, the Army, the Air Force, all of you guys who are out there serving your country, putting your lives on the line. You guys who are in the National Guard, you guys who are working for the U.S. government in various capacities, here and abroad. I give a shout out to all you brothers. We give a shout out to all you brothers. We want to talk about you guys as well as the civilians, black men. What's going on? What's going on? I see you guys in the chat. We talk about all you civilians, those of us who are not in the U.S. military, but we are soldiers of sorts, different type of soldiers, intellectual soldiers, philosophical soldiers, street soldiers, corporate soldiers, working class soldiers. We got our own war. We are black men. And we have a war that we deal with every single day. And hell, you might as well call it a world war. You might as well call it right here in the United States, because there are guns, there are tanks, there are all sorts of weapons of mass destruction that are pointed toward us every day. We are under surveillance all the time. we know what it's like to live as occupants, those who are subject to an occupying force that we did not invite into our domicile, our domains, where we live, our homes, our communities, so on and so forth. And a whole bunch of us are treated like prisoners, political prisoners. And so we know what it means to deal with conflict. We know what it means to constantly have to fight for our lives. But tonight, my brothers, I see you all in the chat. Tonight, my brothers, we're going to take this conversation to a high level, man. Tomorrow marks exactly 20 years since the World Trade Center fell as a result of terrorist attacks, both of the towers, which resulted in more than 3,000 casualties. And those attacks which took place 20 years ago left a mark all over the United States and the rest of the world. And those of us who are old enough to remember where we were at that particular time, we know the feelings, the sentiments, we know the fear, we know the anger and the vitriol that went through us during that moment when the Twin Towers fell. And here we are 20 years later, an entirely new generation has emerged. A new generation has emerged. Young Americans young people all over the world who were born in the aftermath of 9/11. They're 18 years old, they're 19 years old, they're in college, they're just beginning their young adulthood. They are just starting out in life. Many of them have no clue as to what it was like to live through that moment. But this stream right here is dedicated to all of the events that have taken place since 9/11. Thank you for that donation, Mr. Rasheed Barnes. Oh, we got to talk tonight, brothers. We have to talk about the legacy of 9/11. We have to talk about Al-Qaeda. We have to talk about the Taliban. We have to talk about what has recently happened with Afghanistan. And we have to talk about, in a very real and visceral way, the place of the United States in the image of the world after the Taliban successfully took back Afghanistan from the moderate, educated, liberal, US-backed forces within that part of the world. And how the Taliban's occupation and domination of Kabul and all of Afghanistan and America's forced withdrawal, I'm going to say forced withdrawal, the United States military, the US corporate-backed military was forced to withdraw from that part of the world. And we have to talk about what that means, We have to talk about Islam and the ideas that keep Islam alive. We have to talk about an ideology, a worldview, a mentality, a set of beliefs that befuddles, that puzzles the Western mind. A worldview that people in the West simply do not understand. They simply do not understand. They do not understand the resilient nature of radical Sunni Islam vis-a-vis the Taliban and radical Islam in other parts of the world. Practiced by ISIS, practiced by Boko Haram, and practiced by groups that have not yet been identified by the Western media. And yes, brothers, we have to unpack all of it. We have to unpack all of it. Unpack all of it, brothers, because this has a significant import for the lives of Black men. We are looking at U.S. failure. We are looking at U.S. failure. 20 years. 20 years. The world's greatest military, the strongest, mightiest military ever produced by the wealthiest country on the planet, the most sophisticated, adept killing machine in the world, brought to its knees by a highly organized, highly committed unto death group of men in the mountains, situated primarily in the mountain region of Afghanistan. How this military has been brought to its knees. Not only has the military been brought to its knees, but American democracy, liberal ideas, everything associated with American culture that Americans prize, those things that we think, or that many people think in this country, educated liberal people think are good for the rest of the world, those things have been forced out. And before I get too far in this, I'm going to bring the G with the PhD in momentarily, I need to make a couple of disclaimers because this is going to be an intense and a provocative conversation. Let me just say this, is that I do not support terrorist or terrorism, terrorist activity. I will say this: when George W. Bush declared a war against terror, going after Al-Qaeda, I supported him wholeheartedly. I did not vote for George W. Bush, but after 9/11, it was clear that terrorism is something that you cannot play with, and that you cannot be passive, and you cannot play with diplomacy. You have to be swift. You have to be fierce. You have to be forceful. And I will say this: I think that there were some wrong terms that were made. We went into Saddam Hussein's territory. We went into Iraq looking for weapons of mass destruction. Didn't find them. Wasted a lot of money. Lots of American lives. We took a wrong turn. But the war on terror was necessary. And I will say the surveillance and the policing apparatus that was a part of it, the creation of Homeland Security, I believe it was necessary. But I will also say that it also had some negative consequences, because the war on terror and terrorism coupled itself with other wars here domestically, i.e. the war on drugs, i.e. the war on Black men, policing, prisons, mass incarceration, so on and so forth. But I want to make it emphatically clear that we are not here. I do not support terrorists. I don't support radical Islam. I do support the right of Muslims, moderate Muslims, progressive Muslims, to live their lives peacefully. But I do not support any type of fundamentalism, Islamic fundamentalism, Christian fundamentalism, Jewish fundamentalism that is tied to terror, militarism, and death for the sake of preserving their own sense of religious purity, sanctity, and community. But at any rate, after making those disclaimers, I'm gonna bring in the G with the PhD. I'm gonna have the G with the PhD come on in here so that we can have this conversation. What's going on, my brother? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
What's going on, brother Neil? What's going on?
I am well. I'm well, man. I am so glad that you're here. And I want the guys to know, I said I invited the G with the PhD to come in on this conversation because he's a trained political philosopher, and he's adept in American political thought and how we think about democracy here and across the world, and the pitfalls of democracy, a liberal democracy in particular. And I know that the G with the PhD has a lot to say in terms of what has recently happened with the people in Afghanistan. And so I am glad that he's here. There's so much to say, brother. Brother, you can just weigh in and just reflect however you wish.
Yeah, I'll just jump in, man, and talk, and we just having a conversation.
Yes, sir.
Like a natural conversation. So, yeah, man. Well, we know how all this started. It all started with 9/11, and you had a group of radical Islamic terrorists who basically, they came in and they attacked the Pentagon. They attacked the World Trade Centers, Twin Towers in New York. And I mean, they, who knows what other planned attacks that they had. But, you got to think about the motivations of these people and why they did what they did. Okay. And, one of the, things that these people had an issue with was what they considered to be, U.S. involvement in Israel, Which, one could argue, like when the Israel state came into being, it was occupied by Palestinians.
Yep.
And using the narrative, I mean, you're a religious scholar. I mean, using this narrative of God's chosen people deserving to have a home in this mythopoeic area, this geographical location. Their assertion that they were owed this land owing to this, this narrative, this mythopoeic narrative, and to displace, the original inhabitants of that area, it rubbed a lot of Muslims the wrong way.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And of course, Israel, I mean, it's a Western nation. I mean, it might appear to be, its own sovereign state and to operate by its own principles and its own norms. But for the most part, it's an extension of Western culture implanted in hostile territory. And the territory is now hostile precisely because of the implantation of a group of people whom are considered to be outsiders in that region. And so, just imagine somebody coming into your area, your territory, your safe space, and just taking it over. What's the difference between doing that and what was done to the Native Americans? Or European colonialism all over the world? What's the difference?
There you go.
So that would rub some people the wrong way, wouldn't it? If somebody came into your house, start moving your furniture around, start telling you what you can, what you can't do in your own home, how would you feel?
Yeah. And then also when you add the fact that they were aided by the former British Empire when they were ceasing to be a colonial entity, and then also the United States. You know what I'm saying? So you've got allies. You've got allies with the United States, with the U.S. in the U.S., and you've got allies in Europe. And here you go, these people, you can call them the Palestinians, these folks, who are, contending not only with Israel, but, their connections to this emerging, this now superpower called the United States. You know what I'm saying? So you can imagine all the resentment that is bred, you know what I'm saying? And of course, yeah. This is so now the whole issue of violence and and then here's the other thing. So you're talking about two Abrahamic religions, man.
Correct.
Two Abrahamic religions. They've got different texts, but they still look at that singular myth. Abraham and and one religion, i.e. Islam. They have this whole notion of submission, and they believe in protecting their community, the ummah. And in Islam, the idea is that you defend it. There's a deep masculine code, that is right there.
Correct.
And we are willing to die through struggle, jihad.
Correct.
And so what do you have? Even as we speak, even as we're talking about Afghanistan, in the civil war that's going on there, simultaneously, we're still in a world where the Palestinians and the Israelis are still in the ring. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
And one believes, well, both of them actually believe that they have right to the land. You know what I mean? Because one group was there, prior to this other group which had left.
Right.
And so the Israelis come back and they use the biblical text and all that kind of stuff to claim it. I mean, yeah, man, there go there's your conflict, right there.
And you should have more knowledge about this than most. sometime around the 7th century is when Islam rose into prominence. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's pretty much accurate. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and initially, you know, they for the most part, you know, there've always been tensions to some degree or another, but they coexisted in peace.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there was no major antagonisms
Mm-mm.
between the two. And of course, you have to understand that, you know, like during the 7th century, when you're talking about Christianity, you're talking about way before the Protestant Revolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about the Vatican, the papacy, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if the Vatican existed during the 7th century.
No, it didn't. It didn't exist. No.
You know, so but when you're still talking about a, a, a a Christian faith that you know, was pretty much you know, a Roman Catholic tradition. There was no Protestant
Mm-mm.
tradition. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so and Europe was in the Dark Ages.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a superpower. I mean, for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, the Islamic world
Mm-hmm.
was the beacon of light. They were the ones that ruled the roost, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Oh yeah.
Because you know, as they came into prominence, they were opulent. They had wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they were the preservers of philosophy and
Mm-hmm.
science,
Mm-hmm.
mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, while Europe was wandering around trying to figure out its way, and before its enlightenment, you know, it was the Islamic, you know, scholars and
Mm-hmm.
adepts who
Mm-hmm.
preserve even the Western philosophical tradition, because it would have been lost if those people hadn't preserved it and written commentaries about it. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people don't know that. Okay, they just assume that, like, you know, these people are backwards. You know, they're not learned. You know, that they don't have a scholastic tradition and so on. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, so
Mm-hmm.
these people, you know, like it wasn't until recently that Europe really emerged as a world power to begin with. So we're talking about somewhere around what the 15th century is when Europe actually came into its own.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
you know, and that kind of coincides with the discovery of the New World.
mm-hmm.
You know, their use of slavery in order to develop and to cultivate wealth within that New World.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the genocide of the native
Mm-hmm.
inhabitants of the Americas. So there are people who are rubbed the wrong way of what white folks have done across the world,
Oh yeah.
man. You
Oh
can
yeah.
trust and believe it. And so, I mean, my my thoughts are like, I'm not condoning, you know, war, and I'm not trying to foment hatred and contempt and enmity. But the whole point is, how long do you think you can slap people around the world and you're not gonna get slapped back?
No. Oh yeah. 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 And that's the thing. I mean, they have watched. So if we're talking about, the Islamic world, I mean, here's the deal. Historically, going back to what you were saying earlier, yeah, um, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, particularly when Islam first emerged, coexisted. They were able to coexist um,
Correct.
without any friction or tension or what have you. And what's interesting was that the conflicts that Muslims had, during that period was amongst themselves. Okay,
Right. Right.
and because there was, just struggles over the old tribal way, versus what the Prophet Muhammad was trying to do. You know what I mean? And so you had people who were still stuck in the tribal gods and what have you, and Islam is a new thing at that particular time, and he was an innovator, and so you got people who have similar ethnic backgrounds who are basically at war with each other. But you don't have, I mean, and it's really later on the tensions between Christians and Muslims. That happens much later, and it was really the churches, the Christian church as it developed, which started the fight.
Right.
So Christians are the ones who started to fight with Muslims. You know what I mean? And so and then you had the Crusades and all that kind of stuff.
The
And
Holy Crusades. There you
there you
go.
go.
That's
There
where
you go.
that's where all of this begins.
Yeah. Because they wanted to conquer Muslim territory. Christian emperors and everything, and rulers. But you're absolutely right in terms of the impact of these Western nations, all over the world. And when you think about what we call the so-called Middle East, I mean, they have their own history over there. But what's interesting about, so if we talk about Afghanistan, we talk about Iraq or Saudi Arabia and everything, that's one part of the world, interestingly, and I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary. That's one part of the world that has not really been subject to the type of domination, imperial domination, that say North America has, or Africa, or the Caribbean. You don't have. I mean, we don't have histories. Kind of like with Africa. Slavery. I mean, they were not. I mean, the Arabs were involved in slave trade and what have you, but you don't have a European slave trade, and I haven't seen that history. And if it exists, I want to know about it. European slavery anywhere in the Middle East, or any type of colonial project. What I can say has existed is that you've had, certain parts of the world, say like Turkey and even Iran, at a certain time where they adopted, attempted to secularize their societies, after their elites were exposed to quote unquote Western education.
Right,
And
right.
trying to move the societies away from theocratic rule, ruled by the Quran and God and what have you, to a more secular order. But Islam was so entrenched in that, part of the world, that it was very difficult for a lot of those societies to maintain that. Now Turkey was able to maintain that for quite some time, even to this day. But even now, it's secular, but it has a new resurgence of Muslims who don't embrace the secularism. You know what I mean? So you have more extreme elements that are there. But at any rate, the point I'm making, man, is that these folks have watched us, man. They've watched the United States. They've watched this domination of other people. And this is what I really would like us to really talk about, man. And I'm just going to make a stretch of the imagination, man. So these folks, when we talk about, the Taliban, if we talk about, these extremists, going back to even Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, they have great resentment towards the United States because they know that the United States is an imperial power, and that they seek to impose its will and its culture and its values on everybody. And 9/11 and even the terrorist attacks prior to 9/11, was really a response, man, to the influence, man, of like globalization, man, and global capitalism. And I would tell my students that, if you want to understand terrorism, you got to think about at that time, I called it the McDonaldization of the world, And it's like when you start exporting American capitalism to that part of the world, and when you have the internet and all that kind of stuff, in many respects, man, it opens the door for other things, right? And so you're talking about a group of people who have a deeply theological understanding of the world, strong commitments to family, strong commitments to masculinity, strong commitments to a sense of order. Okay, they have, I would call it, a rage for order. Thank you, Dr. T.S. Johnson, for that wonderful gift. Good to see you in the chat, brother. Glad you're with us. You brothers, get the likes up. Get the likes up. And so what you have is a reaction. So here's the thing. So in Islam, there's this idea. It's called Jahiliyyah in Islam. And what Jahahilia means is it refers to sin. It refers to a condition of backwardness and tribalness. This is like the condition that the people in pre-Islamic Arabia were in, right? Before the Prophet Muhammad. And so when you become a Muslim, what you do is you make a commitment, you surrender to the will of Allah, and you move away from this condition of sin and ignorance, okay? So tribalism and just, dog-eat-dog competition and the like, that kind of characterized pre-Islamic Arabia. And so in Islam, in Islamic theology, it's like you have to do everything within your power to never go back to that condition of sin, to never go back to this condition of ignorance, right? And so the West is seen, by Muslims and people in the Muslim world, people, the radical people, as a heightened expression of decadence. You know what I'm saying? This is a decadent culture.
Well, I mean, hey, Brother Neil, man, I had to laugh on that because, I mean, when you think about it, is the West not decadent?
It is. It is.
I mean, even people in the United States are looking at contemporary Western culture and viewing it sideways. They're looking at it askance.
Yes.
Because there's something awry here. And it is all the offshoot of Enlightenment thinking, where rights trump duty, where, the idea of the individual subject being sovereign over himself, right? Being able to do as he pleases or she pleases and able to dispose of their body as they wish. Yeah. This is a radical idea. I don't know how people don't understand how radical, this concept actually is. And, people call it subjectivism. And there have been people even in the Western philosophical tradition who have critiqued it. I mean, so you got people who are labeled as communitarians, and they argue, and even people during the era of the Enlightenment, like Jeremy Bentham, who is the person who founded utilitarianism. He basically says, look, this whole concept of rights is nonsense. At least let's just explain what it is that we're trying to accomplish historically in concrete terms, and not use these abstract concepts in order to justify a movement away from one form of life to another. Okay. But the West is decadent, bruh. I mean, it's all about hedonism.
Yes.
But without looking at the long-term effects of individual actions and the impact that they have on what is best or what would produce happiness for the long run for the most people on the planet, right? And it's all about self-satisfaction, and it's all about the breaking of tradition.
Yep.
Okay, which is perceived as oppressive, a tradition which has upheld society in various infestations, incarnations for millennia. So all of that's supposed to be now wiped away with this new brand of liberalism that's based on capitalism, hedonism, consumerism, and a lot of people all throughout the world find it to be threatening of things that are deeper, more substantive, and they have a more profound meaning than what people look for meaning now, especially in Western culture. Okay, there's a sense of being a person who is duty bound to a tradition, and that tradition is bigger than him or herself, and that your commitment to follow your duty is contingent. Well, it's not contingent, but it's indicative of your ability to say there's something more important than I am. There's something bigger than me. But in this culture, the sovereign is the individual, and nobody's better than him or her.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, a lot of people don't jive with these kind of sentiments and these feelings. But, you know, if I was to, you know, just get more contemporary with this, but and I will say this though also, the what you call the Middle East, or the, you know, the people from that territory, the indigenous people from that territory, they've been in war with white folks since, you know, Alexander the Great had his clash with Persia. Okay, it's not like these people, you know, have been on one accord. This been like a millennium long struggle. I mean, you just gotta, you know, you gotta place it in its proper historical context, right? So these people have been like, because Persia, Babylon, Istanbul, Turkey, whatever, Constantinople, these places have been holding their own weight for thousands of years. I mean, you know, and so you know, there's always been this tension between these groups of people, and that tension, you know, is playing out contemporarily, but we don't, you know, we don't often look back at the history of the clashes between these groups of people. Okay, but Al Qaeda, they came and did what they did. Okay, and you know, we committed ourselves to Afghanistan. Okay, because it was assumed that Osama bin Laden was hiding in Afghanistan. Okay. But you know, so we go to war. But guess what? Guess what happens as soon as we get into Afghanistan? What happens? Osama bin Laden ducks off.
Flees.
He gets out of Afghanistan.
It's out, yeah.
So the sole purpose for us going into Afghanistan is to get Al Qaeda, but Al Qaeda is gone.
Yeah.
Because they basically went to Pakistan.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. So imagine, like, okay, so imagine that. Let's put this in simplistic terms. Okay. Police and a criminal. You got the D boy, right? The D boy has done something he ain't supposed to do, or you can say it's the mobster. Okay. He did something. He committed a murder or some sort of heinous act. You go to where it's alleged he is, or his team, his posse. You get there, and he's no longer there.
There you go.
So what do you do now?
You can't do anything. but
you
try to wipe
there?
out the game. Yeah.
Do you stay there? You stay there and you punish the people who are there precisely because you're angry that they aided and abetted him initially.
There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go.
And it's like, what if the police come to your house because they think that there's a criminal residing there? They come there, nobody's there. How long do they get to stay there? Like, how long are you going to hold your investigation in my home, knowing that the person that you're looking for is not here? Now, you might keep eyes on the place.
Absolutely.
But to occupy the home and to say, okay, we're not leaving here now. You know, until he comes back. Well, he'll never come back because he knows you're here. You're telegraphing to the world that you're here.
Yeah.
Okay, so but you can't go into Pakistan.
No.
Because you ain't got the heart to go into Pakistan. I'm keeping it real now. It's one thing to go into Afghanistan. It's another thing for you to go off into Pakistan. You ain't ready to go off into Pakistan.
And you can't go in there. And shout out to Xavier Sifo for that super chat. I appreciate you, man. Shout out to you, Fitness for You, for that donation. Glad you're here, man. I appreciate you. Yeah, brothers, y'all get the likes up. Get the likes up. Hit the BMI 3000, Cash App, PayPal, Ronald B. Neal. But listen, you can't go in. One of the reasons why you can't go into Pakistan is because they're on code, right?
Oh yeah, they're on code and they got nukes.
You can't. They got nukes. They on code. All right, and that's the thing I want to get to. What you were saying earlier about duty, and authority, and all of that. See, one thing that brings all those folks together whether they're from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, okay, or anywhere else in that region. All right, they're Muslims. Okay,
There you go.
and they're Muslims, and they are unified by an ideology that tells them to defend their tradition and to put their bodies, their lives on the line for their entire way of life. Okay, and so so they are living out something that has existed for thousands upon thousands of years. You're talking about something that has. We look at it and say, "Oh my God, they're extreme, they're terrorists, and all that kind of stuff." But but those beliefs are tied to how they've organized their society and their entire way of life, you know, and how they protect their society and their way of life from outsiders and outside influences and the like. So no, hell no, you're not going to walk up in the Pakistan and think that the people in Pakistan, whether they're extremists or not, are just going to turn over Osama bin Laden. You know what I mean? And and knowing that hell, the Taliban was formed in Pakistan. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So yeah, so yeah, what we don't understand is that what we've just witnessed is the vestige, or the ongoing legacy of traditional ways of thinking where people still believe in authority. They still believe in authority. They still believe that there is something that is bigger than themselves, greater than themselves, that they must defer to, that there is no sense of an individual. And that's the thing. So in the West, I mean, we just fetishize and elevate the individual over everything. So that's what the right stuff you're talking about comes in that. But here's the deal, man. And I was, Bertrand Russell, he said this a long time ago, even in the history of philosophy. He said, if any society that has too much individualism within it is a society that's bound to collapse. Okay, because
Man.
if you don't have a shared understanding, okay, of who you are as a culture and people, if you don't have shared understanding of like shared norms and rules, authority and all that sort of thing, you are going to collapse. You are going to collapse. And I want to suggest, man, as we're talking about this, man, because I think that what has happened with Afghanistan and with Kabul falling and with the Taliban taking over the region, all that, and with the resilience of the Taliban. So remember now, 2001, the military went into that region and seemingly wiped out the Taliban. Okay,
Oh, that was just a lie. That was just cap.
Yeah. So the idea was that they dismantled the Taliban at that particular time. But what happens over the course of years is that they regrouped. You know what I mean? They reorganized. To the degree where now you have they have a new generation, man. They have a new generation, particularly a new generation of young men who are committed.
Yeah.
18, 19, 20, 25, 26 years old, born in the late 90s, born since September 11th, 2001. You know what I mean? And these folks, their ideology will not allow them to cease from struggling, to give up jihad. It's not going to allow them to do that. And we're confounded by it because in many respects, Western culture is at a place right now, man, where it can't stand up to it. Think about this, man. It just can't stand up to it because we don't have the internal resolve. That is, people, particularly in the United States, we don't have the internal resolve to engage in that type of continued struggle to the point of death. We just don't have it, bro.
Man, and another thing that you really gotta pay attention to, like, okay, the United States military is one of the most technologically advanced militaries in the world. I mean, we have a lot of resources, okay? And there are some gung-ho people in the military, okay?
Yeah.
But you also have to keep in mind, the American ethos is not one of struggle, especially now.
Nope.
Okay,
Nope.
the American ethos is one of self-satisfaction.
There you go.
It's one where there's fractionalization within the culture itself.
Yep.
Okay, nobody gets along here.
Yep.
People are at odds with each other. Women are at odds against men. Blacks are at odds against white folks. Latinos are at odds with blacks and whites, and and it's all about self-serving motivation in relation to what it is that you do and how you go about living your life. It's all about the acquisition of material, and people don't like to be obstructed in the construction of their life plans. There's nothing that pushes back against the individualism. Okay, so knowing this, if there were to be a conflict that popped off on a global scale, what would be the resolve of the average American who's become comfortable with all of the contrivances of contemporary life? What kind of pushback would you be able to offer?
Bingo.
Like, what kind of resolve? You're right when you say the word resolve. Like, what would you be committed to that would make you risk your life for anything?
There you go.
And another thing you got to keep in mind, man, is that the military that we do have is not like the militaries elsewhere in the world, man. Okay, not even in Israel. Israel has a compulsory service component, and men and women both have to serve in that military. Here it's a volunteer military, and the people who run the military, like, say, for example, a Donald Trump.
Yeah.
When he was the president, he didn't have to serve in the military. He gets to command the military after having avoided actually serving and fighting for it. So this is what right now America and many people in the Western world are fat cats.
Yep.
And they know nothing of sacrifice. They know nothing of martiality. They know nothing of dedication. To struggle. In order to win. These people are not playing, bro.
And here's the thing. I think the rest of the world, when I say the rest of the world, those countries like China and Russia, North Korea, India, on and on and on, they see that. They see, I think with this situation in Afghanistan, they see American weakness. Okay. They see it. And we live in a world of competition, man. You know what I mean? And the reality of history, is that people, groups, nations, they seize upon the weaknesses of others. You understand? Because think about it again now. Think about it now. I mean, the greatest military imagined was basically forced out by a group of men who live in the mountains, okay? They don't have the type of military might as the United States. It's like it's like a boxing match. You know what I'm saying? Dumb jokers went 12 rounds and were willing to go 12 more rounds. Okay.
Oh, and then like as the bell was ringing, they're still slugging.
They're still slugging.
They still punching. Because to them, this war is not over. It's not only occupational, it's ideological.
Yeah.
It's economical.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's religious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, like this is about a way of life.
Yeah.
And they consider the Western way of life to be sinful.
Yep, that's it.
To be slothful.
There you go.
To be greedy.
Yep.
To be indignant.
Mm-hmm.
And so these, we just telling the truth, man. You know, it is what it is. This is a war to them for the soul.
So, yes, that's it.
This is a war of the soul for them. And you know, the average American has no idea about the soul. Like the soul is like people go to church here and pray for money.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious now. They don't pray for their salvation as much as they pray so they can get a new car because Jesus is gonna bless them. They're gonna be highly favored.
There you go.
I'm blessed and highly favored. So I'm gonna get me that new house. You understand what I'm saying? So you know, these people have a different level of commitment, Brother Neil. But you know, you just gotta. The Afghans, man. I mean, again, this is a group of people who have been invaded. I mean, you know, the same stock of people. These people have known war for centuries.
Yeah.
The average American has no concept of war, not even today. Like the last thing we know about war in a popular way is World War I, World War II, the Korean War. After that, then you get the Vietnam War, and then after that, what do you have? You got the Gulf War.
Yeah.
Now you got this. Well, the Afghan War came before the Gulf War, and the Gulf War should have never happened in the first place. Because first of all, what people don't know is Saddam Hussein was given weapons, the so-called weapons of mass destruction that they went looking for. The Americans gave them those weapons. The Americans gave Saddam weapons in order for him to, you know, fight against Iran. And the Ayatollah and all them guys over there, you know, who basically, I guess, you know, the Americans, man, basically are trying to use a lot of countries, man, as proxy wars, you know, as proxies for their own machinations throughout the, you know, the global complex, man. But, you know, we go into Iraq after 9/11 because you really don't have anybody to attack in Afghanistan because they all ran to Pakistan.
That's right.
So now you say, instead of going into Pakistan where these cats really are, you decide to go into Iraq and to, you know, take Saddam out because you're mad that you didn't do the job 10 years earlier before when George Bush Sr. was there. You didn't seal the deal then. So now you say, okay, well, let's go back and do that now. Well, they're Muslim. Well, many of the people there are. They're Arabic. So everybody in the West pretty much, you know, agree with us to go in there. But they had a financial interest for going in there. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why they went into Iraq, you know, that oil, man. You know what I'm saying? And Saddam started to, you know, basically terrorize his neighbors to a certain extent. That's the argument. That's the way that the argument goes, you know, the oil fields in Kuwait and so on and so forth. But we had no business in Iraq, man. So every misstep of American foreign policy, man, creates new enemies and rekindles old hatreds, man.
Yeah. And so what happened? And thank you, Barry Little. Thank you, Barry Little, for that super chat. Get the likes up, brother. Get the likes up. Get the likes up. Share the stream. Share the stream. Yeah, man. I mean, and what happened, man? When the U.S. thought it was getting rid of terrorists, what did it do? It created more terrorists, right? And so, you know, in the aftermath of, you know, September 11th and, you know, them going into Afghanistan and doing what they did, you know, it did not quell, you know, the Taliban. It did not quell the terrorists. it gave radical people, those radical people, more reason to recruit and more reason to die for what they believe. Because they're like, look, see, these people don't like us. These people want to dominate us and what have you. They don't see the imperialistic ways in which, you know, they've exerted themselves, you know, towards us and other parts of the world and what have you. And even after, you know, when Obama was office and they you know, killed Osama bin Laden, you know, that didn't do anything but recruit and create more terrorists.
Yeah, you created a martyr, you know,
you
to a cause.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, now Osama bin Laden was also made by the American forces, you know, but see, these people know how to play one side against the middle, you know, like, okay, we'll do your bidding for now, but we have a longer game in view than to be used as your puppets. And the Americans think that they could go into different countries throughout the world, use people as puppets, and continue to be able to use them into perpetuity.
Yeah.
But, you know, people have a mind of their own. They have civilizations of their own. They have values and commitments of their own. And but you know, America, you know, it will learn the hard way. At some point, it will learn the hard way. But one thing I just want to say is, you know, nobody holds power forever.
No.
You know, nobody holds power forever. And you know, you can sound so. You know, I see a comment there where some guy says, you know, it sounds like you guys are haters or something like that.
Yeah.
Let me just say this, man. We speaking the truth, man. Like, what are you, a lover? You're a lover? I mean, think about what America has done to your people.
Yeah.
If you're a black person, think about what America has done to black folks, man.
Yeah.
Now think about the very reason why people who now the colonists rebelled against the crown. What did they do so for? They did so because they said they were taxed without being represented. And it left them in a position that to them was akin to slavery. So that's the reason why they rebelled against the crown, because they said, you are taxing us without us being represented. That's like slavery. So we rebel against you. We're going to fight for our independence. Now, what's the average black person going to say? Oh, well, you know, we actually were slaves. We're not going to fight for our independence. We like it here, bro. We like everything that's occurred and happened to us within the context of this nation state. I'm not trying to be ignorant, but I mean, when you look at it in the historical context, it's like, well, like, what's your stake in the game? Especially now. Like, I mean, how are black men faring in the United States of America? I'm not saying that black men should become terrorists or anything like that. That's not but the question is there historical residue that's nasty here between these folks and black men?
There you go.
Is it nasty? Is the residue great? You can let bygones be bygones because, you know, you got a pat on the head. You know what I'm saying? And even if you are in the military, you know, like, you got to think, okay, where's your state? What do you govern and rule over? And do you ever have any ambitions to do so? Because I can guarantee you, man, like we play this delusional game as if one day we're gonna actually be in control of this, and we have the opportunity and the capacity to actually run this state, to control this machine. You ain't got the inside track, bro. All you got to do is look at the statistics on where most black men fare. You ain't about to get in, man, because you don't fit in. You're not about to run this ship.
There you go.
So we can lie. We can lie all day long. Even if you're in the military, you have black men who fought in World War I and II, in the Korean War, but they come back and get treated like second-class citizens. Don't get access to the GI Bill. Right? Don't get access to FHA and housing loans and all of this, right? And at least those guys had some understanding that there was something wrong going on. We, on the other hand, we have this self-critical positioning, like, well, I did this, and I was a big guy here, and I made something out of myself. What have you really made? You got a little beans, you got a little peanuts, but you still don't run and govern this. These people run and govern their countries, man. Okay. I mean, and there is a hierarchical structure. I'm not saying that there isn't. Like, I mean, everybody's not a boss, in these nations, across the waters of the world. But I mean, at the end of the day, you got to think, man. Where do you fit into the global political game?
Where do you fit? Where do you fit?
But we think we fit in here. A lot of us think we fit in here. A lot of us, are so jingoistic and patriotic to the point where they actually believe this. And some parts of these anthems you sing is about you being a slave. I'm just saying, man, like, that's why I got to break that. Look, I'm from America, man. I love where I'm from, but I also understand the atrocities that have taken place.
Of course.
Where I'm from. Okay. And they ain't been straightened out yet. All the issues have not been resolved. And to say that they have, you're lying to yourself. Okay. And I'm not in the game of lying. I'm not gonna sit here and play games. So we know, like, any group of people that made your people slaves, that's who you rolling with. Like, you support them 100%. I can see if you're using it as a tactic. Even, like, put it this way. I was watching this movie the other day, and it's based on a real life story where you had Rome, who would go into various parts of Germany or the Western tribal nations, right? Take the sons of chieftains in those areas and turn them into Roman soldiers. Okay? But eventually those people, man, they learned the military strategy and the military tactics of Rome and eventually sacked it. So it's a different mentality, man. Like, I'm not gonna go any further into it, man. And this is what I wanted to get at with this conversation, man. Because this stuff, it happened in Afghanistan and in that part of the world, but it speaks to us as Black men. It speaks to us as Black men. Listen, I don't know what's in the mind of those guys over there. And again, I said it at the outset that I'm not a sympathizer of radical Islam and all that kind of stuff, but I understand what's going on over there. Okay, to certain degrees, they want autonomy. They don't want to be controlled by an imperial force. Okay, and I would go so far as to say, and I don't know how in tune. Well, they know what's going on here in America, but I'll just put it like this, man. Those radical Muslims, those Taliban, they don't want to look like Black American men. They're not going to live like Black American men. They don't want to look like us. They don't want to live like us. They don't want our condition. They don't want it. And they're not going to have it. They'll die first. They don't want it. They don't want what has happened to Black people vis-a-vis American domestic policy, family court policy, criminal court policy, all sorts of informal economic employment policies, which have kept us subordinate. All right, policies that are administered by people who don't look like us. Okay, they don't want that. Okay. To be their reality. And I think they see that, and they don't want to see the divisions. So what's so interesting, there's all this conversation, and it's
is to be expected. What's going to happen to the women? What's going to happen to the women and the children, the women and the girls, and the women and the girls, and all that kind of stuff. And you know, we don't have a hard time. We don't have a problem. Now, I don't know any black man who has a problem with women and girls being educated and working and stuff like that. Okay. However, when you add that individualism to it, and then you start adding misandry to it, you know, you go from educating women and girls, them getting jobs and what have you, to creating misandries. Okay. And right. I think that those guys, and again, this is my imagination stretching, they see that. They see it, and they doubling down on Islamic orthodoxy because they don't want those women to be at war with them.
Well, that's what imperial powers do. They come in and they divide and they conquer. You know, they create that is part of counterinsurgency measures. Yeah. You know, it's soft power. Yeah. You fractionalize the population and get them to be at odds with each other so they can never mobilize to resist against the larger force, whether it be economic, political, militaristic, right? Yeah. So, you know, at the end of the day, these people, man, have a way of life that they are dedicated to preserving. And it's not absolutely Western. They have a tradition that they're proud of. Okay? And they don't want to be invaded. And if you hit them, they will hit you back.
Yep.
And, you know, even if they don't have the same technology, they still are going to utilize whatever they have at their disposal to resist against you. Yeah. The same way that they did in Vietnam. Them people over there.
Because think about it, man. Think about it, man. They forced America to expend trillions of dollars, man. Trillions of dollars over the course of 20 years. Now, just think if you continue in that, if America would have continued, you know, struggling over there, fighting them, or trying to, you know, occupy it, you know, to stabilize it in the so-called American way. You do that long enough, but you're gonna bankrupt the country. Do you know what I'm saying? And I know that might sound far-fetched or what have you, but that's a strategy. If you think about it, if you're on the other side, you know, the strategy is to exhaust your enemy's resources.
Yeah.
And make them collapse. Okay. Yeah. You know, so you're spending so much money on foreign policy, you know what I mean, that you're damaging, you know, hell, at some point it's gonna impact your own economy. And it's gonna flatten things out. It's gonna make things worse for you in the end. That's a real strategy, man.
I would use it. You know, so there have been a lot of people who've gone into Afghanistan, man, and tried to run it, control it, dominate it, and you know they've resisted who's come there. You know, and Americans are no different. You know, they and now, you know, the money has been wasted, but the people who run war, the machines of war, they got rich anyway. And the taxpayers in America are the ones who really actually got to foot the bill. We're the ones who are going to pay for and support the war. We're the ones who are going to monetize the war for the people to get rich. And, you know, you had a lot of drugs over in Afghanistan. You got the poppy fields out there. You know, don't think those weren't used as resources.
Of course.
Don't think that they weren't used as resources. You know, my mother was in the Peace Corps, man. You know, and you know, she said, man, she served in Afghanistan in the Peace Corps, and she said, man, you look at a field, man, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And as far as your eyes can see, just poppy. You know, like everywhere. You know, so and you know, there are gonna be people who say, well, you know, we need to love America, we need to love the troops, and you know, we need to support them, and even the men who fought in the war, like all the great men like Charles Young of the past.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these men still had a sense of pride
Mm-hmm.
in blackness
Mm-hmm.
and in black excellence.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't just become obsequious and toady for white folks.
Mm-hmm.
But now this whole idea of struggle amongst black men, I don't know where is it going, Doc? What is it?
Man, I don't know, because we don't. When you compare us to them, man, we don't have an ideology like that. Think about it, man. We don't have an ideology that's tied to, you know, our, thriving in this country, living, you know what I mean? Not just surviving, you know what I mean? That, ideology about life and death that, we would risk our lives for, you know what I'm saying? I don't see it anywhere. You know what I mean? I mean, we talk here in this space, amongst ourselves, and the word is getting out, and brothers are changing their minds and what have you. But to go the distance, to be ride or die, and I don't mean going out and bombing, you know, buildings and all that kind of stuff, and and exacting violence on people. But I'm talking about having a set of principles and beliefs that are non-negotiable. You know what I mean? And you're willing to put your nuts on the line, and to risk it all. We are so Americanified. If that's a word, I'm making a word up now. We're so Americanized. I put it like that: Americanized and Westernized, man. That it's hard to even try to push that type of viewpoint. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we've had moments in history where you had brothers who took the radical path, and some of the stuff was short lived. But we have nothing in comparison to the extreme elements within Islam, who are committed to a certain type of vision where they thrive as men, and their families thrive, and their entire societies thrive, at least as they see their vision, man. We just don't have it, man.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, at the current moment, what you have is a group of people dedicated to ideals about everybody being free to do whatever it is that they want to do, unrestricted.
Yeah.
And how long will that vision actually, uphold? Like how, because to me the vision is unrealistic. I'm just being honest about it. You have these, especially like not trying to deviate from the conversation or the talking points, but like just imagine like what feminists are trying to do with the world.
Yeah.
Like okay, so we're going to change the entirety of the world with a narrative about women being oppressed and dominated.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to change the entirety of the world. We're going to change Islam. We're going to change what's going on in the Middle East. We're going to change what's going on in China and make the world more like Western culture and society.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And we're going to make it to where, the weakest amongst us are going to be lionized. This is the proliferation of what like Friedrich Nietzsche would call slave morality. Mm-hmm. This is it. Mm-hmm. We're in it right now. Mm-hmm. Where the weakest amongst us are contemptuous of the people who are most powerful, and they have no way of actually overpowering the powerful other than through shame. Yep. Through castigation and diatribes and invectives and finger pointing. And it's in the long run, what weight will this have?
Yeah.
I just don't know what we're doing ideologically.
And the thing about it is, I think that ultimately it points to further decline, right? It points to further decline because these ideas, they destabilize. All right. So I mean, we don't have any models of the kind of world that these feminists talking about. We don't have any recent models. We don't have any past models. It's never been done. Okay. And they don't even have a methodology of doing it. Okay. And, by, producing more shame by demonizing, particularly men, continue to demonize men at every level of society, I think that's just going to further corrode things from the inside. You know what I mean? I think it's going to corrode things from the inside. It will make this society more vulnerable to other societies. You know what I mean? And I am convinced, man. I'm convinced that the Chinese are watching us. You know what I mean? And the Russians and North Koreans and other people, and they're seeing America erode internally based upon all this nonsense. You know, and I'll just give you an example, man. So, and I said this on my Facebook page a couple of weeks ago, man. I talked about the state of California and the state of New York. You know, and I call them failed states. California is a failed state, and New York is a failed state. These are liberal states, right?
Mhm.
And I say they're failures. California is a failure because they have a chronic homeless problem. They have a major exodus. People can no longer afford to live there. They're going. You see that the governor. They have this governor race right now. Larry Elder is looking like he might be the next governor of California.
That's crazy.
And
that's crazy. Like, I mean, it's crazy to me to think that Larry Elder would be the governor of California. Not to say that there's anything wrong with Larry Elder, but I mean, just think about recently, you know, the kind of position that Larry Elder has held
yeah,
with you know, within politics. I mean, he's
yeah,
like a commentator, you know, not a real statesman.
yeah.
And you know, the idea that he would be an option and viable, it seems like, you know, we living in a strange world, brother.
I mean, and think about it. I mean, these two states have, you know, they're held up, or they just exist as these so-called bastions, right, of liberalism. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of our ideas about diversity and inclusion and all that kind of stuff, come out of those areas, and or they kind of represent that kind of stuff. But there's an underside, there's a failure, there's a whole bunch of failure there. You know, Cuomo just got kicked out of New York. I mean, he just resigned, as governor and everything. You know, they can't, um, seemingly manage this, the pandemic and everything. And you've got, his party, Democrats, imploding internally. Who's going to step up and lead them? I mean, you can barely live, particularly in New York City. You can't live in New York City. It's too expensive. It's no longer the place that it was, 30 years ago. And from my perspective, man, they just represent kind of the failures of liberal democracy. You know what I mean? And I will say this to say that, there are some, and thank you, K. Ron S. for that super chat. Thank you very much. I would say, yeah, there are some good things about liberal democracy, that I've benefited from, all of us have benefited from, you know what I mean? But when this stuff goes haywire again, like I said, with Bertrand Russell, man, if you don't put checks and balances on individualism, you're going to destroy yourself. A society will destroy itself. And you're not concerned about the things that, that really matter. You know what I mean? And, I'm for social justice and all that. But I mean, we're not even in the post-pandemic world, man. We're still dealing with the pandemic, people losing their jobs. There's, so much that's happening on the economic front that's going to, have an impact, years to come. And, we're again, concerned about, the gender of who's going to be the next president or what have you. You know what I mean?
It's absolutely ridiculous, man. Like if this is what we're doing, like as far as I'm concerned, this is what liberalism does, man. It sets the society apart from each other. This is why, like in philosophy, there's been this conversation. It's been ongoing for like decades about the shortcomings of the Enlightenment, okay, and what's actually important, and like a sense of community, an ethos. America does at this moment. America really does not have an ethos. Okay, the only ethos it has is a dedication to consumerism and to conspicuous consumption and this whole narrative of the past, which is all conflicted.
Mm-hmm.
You got a bunch of different people from different genders, races, ethnicities, and it's supposed to be the strong point, right?
Yeah.
But we're not congealed. Nobody here is bonded. So this is a loose group of persons, and you also have to factor in the Latinos.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know, like a lot of people get this twisted about the Latinos, but these people are a mixture between Europeans and the native inhabitants of the Americas, man. And some Africans, because you got a lot of Africans who were transported over here as slaves. Okay, so what is to become of them? What if they have like this different thought process, and they begin to say, okay, well, the country is weak now. With so many internal issues that it's having, we want our territories back.
Yeah.
What's to stop them? What's to stop these people from thinking like this?
Nothing.
What's to stop them from saying, okay, we're growing in number. These people are not bringing an influx of Western immigrants here.
Yeah.
What's to stop us from re-establishing our authority in this territory and issuing in, a new era of, the Aztecan Empire?
There you go.
Who's to stop them?
There you go. I mean, the thing about it is that, I don't want to make strict comparisons with them in the Islamic world, but they are holding on to their traditions. They aren't. They might side. Some might side with liberal camp. Others might side with the right wing camp or conservative camp. But both of them. But whether, despite where they land, there are certain fundamental commitments that they have that they hold on to. Okay, in terms of family, in terms of being entrepreneurial, in terms of focusing on bigger things, larger things, other than like identity, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? They're not obsessed with that sort of thing. Building power, creating power. That's it. It's kind of like in Miami. You got the Cubans in Miami, man. They own Miami. They control South Florida. And they're not trying to give up their control of South Florida. They're not going to. They're not going to do it. You know what I'm saying? And they're very clear about who they are and their commitments and all of that. And they're quick to say F you to anybody who would challenge them on their commitments and dare them to deviate from what they believe and hold dear. You know what I mean? And so I think you're right. I mean, that is a strong possibility because the demographers are saying that in the next 30 to 40 years, the Latinos are going to be on top. They're going to be the number one population. I mean, white people are not reproducing, and you got more white folks on, opioids and other things, and you got white decline,
But they had to. Man, these people had to know this from the beginning, though. Like you can't kill off an entire continent of people, man. You could try, but it's very difficult. Humans are like roaches, man.
Yeah.
And have Latinos been westernized? Yes, they've been anglicized. Okay, I'm not saying that they haven't. They have. I mean, especially the mestizos, the half breeds or whatever the case may be. Just like we are, African American blacks are half breeds. Okay, most of us. Okay, we mixed up with white folks. Okay,
that's it.
The children of concubines.
That's it.
I mean, we can lie about it if we want. We can lie about it or we can tell the truth. Okay? And some people won't like it. Well, I'm a this dog on it. Okay, well, just look at the history. Like, why do we look different than Africans look?
There you go.
You know, but at the end of the day, they were conquered by Spain. You know, that's hence the reference to Latino. I know we're getting off subject and
No,
code, but all we
we
doing is talking about global politics and how,
that's
you
what we're
know,
doing.
what is our place in it?
We,
The only thing we have is Black America. I'm telling you right now, the only thing I've heard that has even sparked a political pulse amongst Black men recently has been the subject of reparations,
mm-hmm.
or you know how you know there's an issue that we have with Black women. Other than
Mm-hmm.
that, like what's a long-term plan for Black men?
I know.
And we don't have any. We don't have an ethos. We don't have a culture. We don't have a value system apart from the people who enslaved us, man.
Yeah.
And people tried to develop one, right? I mean, it hasn't been that there have been, you know, there haven't been attempts. I mean, people have made attempts, but they've been forgotten. Like, who cares about all that crap? Well, you will care about it when the social political landscape of the global kind starts to change. Then you're gonna start worrying about it then, because then you're gonna worry about where do you fit in.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and that's why we're having this conversation, man, about Afghanistan, man. Because think about this. So, okay, on one level, we're talking about the Taliban, but listen, man, I think what has happened here, what has happened in Kabul and all that, I think it's a point of mobilization for other groups, man. So the Boko Haram, they still on the map. ISIS is still on the map. There are other places still on the map. You know, there are lots of this. You know, the chattering classes, the talking heads are talking about, you know, Afghanistan possibly being, you know, a haven, a citadel, you know, for global terrorism. You know what I mean? And I know there's tensions between, you know, some friction between Afghanistan and Pakistan and what have you. But you know, the way history goes, you know, your so-called enemy can become your ally overnight. You know what I mean?
Especially those, I mean, especially those people, man. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
it ain't no strange secret, man, that you know, the Pakistanians really the ones who created the Taliban, man.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
let's not get it twisted, you know.
yeah,
Like they facilitated the growth, the emergence, and the spread
yeah,
of the organization that we now call the Taliban. They
yeah,
did that.
yeah,
They
yeah,
made that happen. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
So
the thing. So thing is that so you know, you listen to Biden and other people, you know, talk and everything. It's like, well, we need, you know, Americans can no longer be the leader in containing the so-called threat. You know what I mean? Even though, you know, you had the Brits and the Germans, they were also in Afghanistan, everything like that. You know, they want, you know, Biden and other folks, and they want the Chinese to step up, and they want these other, you know, countries to step up in terms of policing these terrorist threats. But there's no guarantee that they're gonna step up, right? You know, they might just sit back and just watch these people do whatever they want to do. You know what I mean? We don't know, and I pray that there isn't another terrorist attack on the United States. But in light of these events, I wouldn't be surprised if these folks are thinking about it. You know what I'm
man,
saying?
look, you just got to think, man. They say all is fair in love and war, man, and
Yeah,
you know, America's just used to not having to deal with any conflict, and it's primarily because of the geographical location
yeah,
that America exists in. Like, I mean, people would have been put a black eye on America if America was connected to the old world.
yeah.
You can get, I can guarantee you that.
Oh,
Okay?
yeah.
But I mean, tactically, we exist in what, you know, in the textbooks they call splendid isolation. Like you, you got the Atlantic and the Pacific. Like, who can cross those waters without telegraphing that they're coming? You understand what I'm saying? The last group of people that actually tried
Uh-huh.
were the Japanese. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
you know how that panned out. But I mean,
yeah.
man,
It's, yeah.
ain't nothing to stop it from happening, though. I mean, we act like it's an impossibility, like it can't happen.
It can happen. And so you're talking about, you were saying earlier, what is it going to take for Black men to get clarity, right? And I think, I'm hoping that this doesn't, this isn't the case, but it seems to me that a scenario like that is what would give Black men some clarity, okay, on their position in the world, all right? And again, I'm not hoping this happens, man, but these people can tag team. They can tag team up against the United States, okay, and do anything. And we're not talking about World War III, but we're talking about something close, something near that. You know what I mean? And if anything, that's what brings clarity. I think, and you're right, man, because we haven't had a major war since super war since World War II. And when you look at the era, and you've seen it, I mean, people had clarity about who they were, right? About where they stood in the world, where America stood, and everything. And it's been a long time since we had that situation, that kind of state of affairs. But I think that unfortunately, that might be the scenario to emerge for Black men to get that clarity. Apart from that, I think having conversations like this, getting Black men to think, to contextualize themselves in relationship to the rest of the world. Look at what's happening. Look at what these men in these other countries are doing. Look at how they're moving. Okay.
Right.
And look at the potential threat that they pose. Okay. And how does that relate to your life, and where you are? All right. Again, I'm going to go back. These guys don't want to be like us. All right. They don't want. Do you think that those Muslims, and I see what they're doing. And again, we are not opposed to women's rights. We support. Black men have never stood in the way of women, Black women in particular, having freedoms and all that kind of stuff. And that's we have to get to this later, but it's like when you talk about patriarchy, this is real patriarchy. You know what I'm saying? This is real hardcore patriarchy, and it's something that is foreign. I mean, it's foreign to Black men. Okay, it's foreign to Black men. It's foreign to Black America. We have this makeup patriarchy that the feminists put out there, and all of that. But to get back to my point is that we got to contextualize our lives in relation to the rest of the world. These men, they don't want to be like us. They don't want to be treated like us. They don't want to be, I'm just going to say it, like they don't want to be the bitches of the United States.
Oh,
you
wow.
know what I'm saying?
Ooh-wee.
They don't want that. Okay?
Yeah, we checked it at every turn, bro. And the sad thing is that, there is no tradition that Black men can fall on that's ancient.
No, there you go.
This hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
Apart from the traditions that were given to us.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we could look at and say, this is uniquely ours.
There you go.
And we are willing to die to preserve it.
There you go.
At all costs.
There you go.
I mean, like you got individual Black men running around trying to get the bag. I mean, like, listen, if you want to know the mind state of Black America, man, just listen to the average rapper. Or look at like what Black men do, like the athletes, or even look at Black men in politics, like what their aspirations are. And they're always within the scope and the range of what's going on in Western liberal societies. There's nothing apart from it.
Yes, sir.
Nothing at all. Nothing to differentiate oneself from it. Even if this thing was burning down today, like the Titanic, most Black men would be like, we don't know any other way. Let's just go down with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. There is nothing we have.
Nothing.
And other Black men will get mad at you for even proposing that there ought to be something that we develop. But if we did it, it would have to be done ad hoc. And many men have tried it. Many men have tried it, you know. Many men have tried, and most have failed. But you know, you just got to think about what other men in the world have done. Like, what did Muhammad actually do? He took a group of men who were at war, tribal men who were at odds with each other, and organized them around a faith-based tradition. That men today in that area of the world, the so-called Middle East, which is a misnomer anyway, but adhere to presently, even if it was something that was just created ad hoc. I mean, you know, black men, like, we fight in their wars, but do we fight in our own? Like, what are our struggles that we willing to fight for? That's the only question that's trying to be evinced out of this discussion. Even what is there worth planning for us?
There you go.
Or is it all a matter of individual life plan construction and success within the context of Western liberal culture? Like, I mean, and as far as I can see, look, I've even tried to say this, and I think I'm gonna do a show about this. You know, when you start even talking about conservatism in the United States, even that is something that emerges out of the Western Enlightenment tradition. Because if you start looking at the economic policies of conservatives, it's nothing but classical liberalism.
That's all. That's all it is.
I mean, that's all it is. It's classical liberalism sans the Marxist component. That's all it is. It's no, it really is not much different. But people, you know, get caught in minutia, and you know, they like to think that, you know, there's this big war going on, but it's a proxy war for white folks. Okay, between the Marxists and the classical liberals. Okay, but at the end of the day, all the economic policy that conservatives talk about is that they came out of the Enlightenment tradition. Adam Smith.
That's it.
That's an Enlightenment ideal, and it's predicated upon the ideals of negative liberty. Okay, and individualism. That's what it is now. Now I know it because I've read The Wealth of Nations, and I've, you know, taken courses on the history of economic thought all the way back from Plato up to contemporary culture. Okay, so
and if you look at a Supreme Court justice like someone like a Clarence Thomas, and the way he's ruled over the course of his career, that's what you got. People would not want to call him a classical liberal, but the way he reads the Constitution and all that kind of stuff, and looks at the individual and what he's been talking about, that's his entire career, the individual. You know, they call it post-racialism and what have you. It is, or color blindness and what have you. But at the end of the day, it has to do with, you know, the so-called rights of the individual and what have you. And hell, and people don't talk about this with him in terms of economics and how he rules, in terms of you know, court cases involving corporations and businesses and stuff like that. It goes right back to what you're talking about. You know?
Yeah. So a contemporary political conservative in American culture, to me, is a brand new incarnation. You know, like, it's, if you put it in historical context, right? Like the person who one would consider to be the consummate ideologue of the conservatism coming out of the European tradition is a man named Edmund Burke. Okay, I don't know if you ever heard of Edmund Burke, but, you know, and they were resisting against the excesses of the French Revolution, because they saw what took place in the French Revolution, and it was like, this is absolutely insane. Established monarchs being killed, you know, having their heads cut off, and an entirely new constitution being written overnight. Right, but even American, though, you know, to some extent, is patterned after the French Revolution. It is a revolution that took place, and we don't say, you know, life, liberty, and fraternity, but we say, you know, give me my right to life, liberty, and property.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's some, amendments, some modifications, but it's still centered under this idea that we can create a constitution ad hoc. That is not conservative at all.
No.
That is radical, revolutionary, transformative practices being put into place. That's what that is. Okay? Now, when you start talking about conservative, you got to talk about the preservation of traditions that are long standing.
That have been tried and tested. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's it, and see, and that's why, because I affirm tradition. I think, especially as I've gotten older, the tried and the tested is a litmus test for all this innovation, right? And so I think that's where we're at a disadvantage in relationship to other cultures, okay? Because I think for a certain point, America has had this kind of dance, right, between innovation and tradition. There's been this dance. And I think up until recent years, when I say recent years, maybe up until the 70s, or maybe even up into the 80s, maybe 70s, some said the 70s, you had more tradition, right? But once we break into the 80s and everything like that, and a different type of liberalism kind of emerges and all this innovation, I think you have all these experiments. And again, we're a part of an experiment. And feminists don't like this. Feminists don't like this, and there are other people who don't like this. When you say, even Black people, we were, to be honest with you, Black folks really didn't experience freedom until after 1970. You know what I'm saying? Precisely. And so this stuff is new, right?
Right.
We've been dealing with new shit for the past 50 years. You know what I mean? And we had no clue as to where this new shit gonna take us. but here we are, and a lot of the new stuff ain't working, right?
Man, it ain't working for everybody. It's not working for everyone. Okay, and
you got other societies. You have these other societies that are not engaging in these social experiments. They just don't do it. You know what I mean? And they maintain, some continuity with the past and what has worked, and everything. You know what I mean? And it just it remains to be seen. What is going to happen to the United States? I just think that this situation with Afghanistan and American foreign policy and what we're seeing is a symbol, man. I think it's a symbol of declinism. A lot of folks have been talking about this stuff, for years now. But I think it's a part of it. And people in the United States, they see it. The so-called conservatives see it. And I think what's going to happen, that's why 2024 is going to be significant. I think if it's not going to be Donald Trump, I think you're going to have another type of authoritarian figure to emerge.
You're going to get that from these white folks on the right. Yeah. You're going to get that, okay? When they say enough is enough, and they say, okay, the social experiments that you all are performing are undermining. You're whittling away the fabric of society. Ideals are okay. Look, we're academicians. We deal with ideals, okay? Yeah. But there has to be something that pushes back against ideals, right? Like you can't just tighten the screw and change up millennia worth of tradition overnight and then think that you're going to have successes. You don't even know what the outcome is going to be. Yeah. But you think that because in your mind you're doing the right thing. This is and we are using these Western liberal ideals in order to determine what is and what is not right, what is and what is not fair. Okay, we're using the nomenclature and the ideology of the Western Enlightenment in order to do it. Okay, and you know, the question is you know, whether or not we're doing the right thing. And I don't know, man. The way this world is characterized now, man, we want all these radical changes. We want all this radical freedom, but the world doesn't work that way.
No.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, so you start to change the structure of the family. Okay, what's going to happen to children?
Yeah, yeah.
Now you might be free and you might feel like you got this newfound power, right? Because you got control over the children and you know you love them or whatever the case may be. But what's the outcome for the children in perpetuity?
Yeah.
What kind of children are you going to have? What kind of political education are they going to receive? And then what kind of tradition are they going to uphold?
Yeah.
You know, like most people who live in America, whatever it is they're looking for, you know, it's mostly, you know, living a life of leisure. Like, how can I work to live a life of leisure? This is the goal. you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's all about everything is about getting an education if you can get one. So that so that you can do what? So you can go to work. And so that you can, you know, go on trips.
About things.
Escapism, you know, it's I can purchase things to make me feel better and to show that, you know, I'm important, I'm somebody.
Yeah.
Most people in the world don't operate by those principles, right? I'm not like, and this is the thing. Like, some Western philosophers have pointed this out. This is why I'm a big fan of, like, you know, Heidegger, and you know, Alasdair MacIntyre. Is another person, even though he is a Marxist, you know, I'm not really a Marxist. I don't think that's going to work either. I think that's more idealistic than even the classical liberal tradition. But I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the whole notion is, what are the most important things in this world? It's your family.
There you go.
It's the interconnections and the quality of relationships that you have with other people.
There you go.
That's really what's important, because everything else is a construct. Everything else really is. See, we talk about Red Pill, right, all the time. But like, the Red Pill is a movie about a social construct that human beings live in, right, in order to power machines. But the most important thing in the world is life and resistance against that which prevents you from being able to enjoy it in its most most supreme and sublime, you know, manifestation, bro. That's what it is, bro. And where would you rather be? Who would you rather be with than anybody else on this earth? And right now, all we got is smoke for each other all day, every day. There is no quality to relationships, even like between men and women, between brother and brother, sister and sister. You know, the whole schema is set up on antagonisms and tension and claims against each other. So it's the individual against everybody else, or groups of individuals against everybody else. And the question is, like, how long will that last before it eats itself up? How long before, you know, it unravels and reaches its logical conclusion?
I think I'm convinced that it's not sustainable, you know, in the long term. I'm convinced it's not sustainable. As long as you have all this corrosion and everything that you just named and described and all of that, I think it just leads to, you know, just the fall, you know, of the United States. And here's the thing. I don't think that, and maybe younger generations might be different or what have you. It goes back to something that, you know, we were talking about earlier. You know, in this country, we don't have the resolve to, like, go back and try to fix it, right? To stop and say, just stop and say, okay, this is what we need to do to fix ourselves. It's like, so it's like, I live in this country, and really, to be honest with you, man, I don't like the idea, and I'm not an American exceptionalist or whatever. I don't think that America is the best thing, smoking or what have you, man. But I don't find any gratification in American decline. Okay, I don't find any gratification in it falling, the U.S. dollar, the currency being diminished and what have you, the economic system falling, people being out of work and what have you. I don't find any joy in that. And I'm of the position that I'm like, well, how do we fuck it? And if people want to call me a conservative, they can call me a conservative. I'm like, how do we maintain strength, right? And what do we have to do, to maintain, a strong position, in the world? Because shit, I don't want to be subject to endless terrorist attacks. I don't want to be subject to, predatory nations coming at us at will. You understand what I'm saying? I don't fuck being the, we know how it is to be underdog as black men, and as a subculture. You know what I'm saying? But then to be a black man as a subculture within a declining society, you know what I mean?
Man, well, either you can look at it as opportunity or you can look at it as disaster. But I mean, the chickens always come home to roost, bro. That's what Malcolm X said a long time ago, man. And I believe it to be true, man. You reap what you sow.
Yeah.
You get out what you put in. Yeah. And if you put out, disaster, you put out imperialism, you put out force, you put out fraud, you put out exploitation and manipulation throughout the world, that's going to come back at you. Oh, yeah. Now, and America, before it began its imperialistic phase, I mean, it had an opportunity to, it had an opportunity to build up its own culture and its own society without, going all about the world trying to police it and trying to be exploitative. And but they had this fear of Russia, gaining ascendancy, and the threat from from the Cold War prompted them to do a lot of strange things. Okay, and I think it was mostly based on paranoia, but and the fear, it's this a lot of what's taking place in the contemporary world has to do with this, the craziness going on internally with Western culture, just in general. Okay. But that's all settled down, but it can rouse back up. Yeah. And take different forms and appear in new visages. But as far as, do I want America to just blow up, get destroyed? Not at all. But at the same time, America better straighten up and fly right and do right by its people, or it's gonna get what it's coming to it regardless.
Regardless, yeah.
It's gonna get what is coming to it regardless, because there's always a penalty. Yeah. Like you're a theologian, man. Okay. I'm a firm believer in this, man. You don't get punished for your sins by some, specter, all-powerful specter somewhere, okay? Practically and tangibly, you get punished by your sins. And you put out enmity and strife throughout the world, that's gonna come back on you, man. Like we went into Iraq, man, and
yeah.
Like, would you want your neighborhood blown to bits, man? 500,000, 600,000 people dead. Would you want that for yourself?
Dude,
like, when you talk about weapons of mass destruction, we have them. And now we got soldiers who, with joysticks, just like playing video games, man, they got drones, man.
And they got, yeah. And the thing about it is that in that part of the world, we're talking about the new generation, right? So you have men who are under the age of 30 who lost their parents. I'm talking about Muslims, right? Their parents and their families were taken out because of those strikes. You know what I mean? They might have been 10 years old, 12 years old. You know what I mean? and they've carried that shit with them, and they're gonna take it to their grave. and that's their resentment and hatred of the United States. You know,
Come on, man.
So
somebody bombs your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Or not, like somebody bombs your country.
Yeah.
Kills hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
Displaces entire populations within cities,
yes.
like natural disasters, but this is a man-made disaster.
Yes.
All in the name of you being mad at some other leader. You know what I'm saying? And so, human beings created this, man. Human beings created these conditions that we live under, man. And unfortunately, it's a few people who are pulling these strings, globally and internationally. You can call them elected officials, or you could say their connection to long-standing lineages, or whatever the case may be. I'm pretty sure there's some people there, who are members of old established power and what have you. But if you can't slap people around and don't expect not to get slapped back, man. And I don't care, even if they got, like less advanced military technology than you do, they'll still come after you. Okay, because it's a principle thing.
There you go.
It's a matter of pride.
Yeah. Yep. There you go.
It's a matter of, to be quite honest, it's a matter of justice. And I think Americans need to be more, especially just be more aware of what's going on internationally and hold their leaders accountable. Because right now, Americans don't hold their leaders accountable.
No.
The average American has no participation in the outcome of political decisions than a customer has an impact over what Walmart is going to stock. Now, I mean, indirectly they may have, but like in terms of saying to leaders, like, no, we don't want to be a part of this. No. And being able to impact the decision-making processes of those politicians, we just don't have it, bro.
Yeah.
And we're too cluttered and distracted in our thinking. Like the closest thing that we get to politics, man, is looking at what people are doing, on C-SPAN, MSNBC, and Fox News, the intrigues related to politics and what they're doing. So we got commentary about specific politicians, but when it comes to actually participating in political processes, other than through voting, which we don't do when's the last time you went to vote? I mean, like it's to say that actually has an impact on the outcome of what's happening in the world is farcical. And I'm a political philosopher, so you don't have any substantive control over where the country is heading.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
No, you don't. And the people who created democracy, the Greeks, okay, and democracy, the word demos is the mob, and ocracy, the rule. So every Athenian, Spartan, or city-state citizen would have to serve, and they would have to come together and engage in dialogue about what is supposed to happen to us, and what are we supposed to be doing in order to preserve our way of life. In what direction are we heading? And I just don't think that happens for the average American citizen. It just doesn't.
No, I agree with you 100%. And I think that contributes further to the erosion, right, of the society, because we're distracted. They don't know because they're distracted, and you have the media, the mainstream corporate media, what have you, with advertising and all that, selling products. That's their whole thing, selling products, right? And so we're distracted by consumerism while simultaneously, eroding, from within. And unfortunately, man, I just think that the picture that's going to emerge, man, is that um, uh, we're going to reach a place where we are so internally weak that we're just going to be vulnerable. And the only way, I'm not going to say this is the only way to offset, but I'm going to say one response to this, because I'm not the only one thinking like this. Like, that's why I was saying earlier that these people on the right, they're going to start running these authoritarian people. You know what I mean? You have another person who's going to come along and say, listen, our society is falling apart, and we have to rethink our priorities and what have you. And they're going to try to do that. Some might call it fascist in the fascist way or what have you, but they're going to try to bring it back into line with some type of tradition. Whether that happens and works, I don't know. You know what I mean? But I do know that that's going to be one of the responses, to that. But at the same time, there is this thing where we just may, and again, I'm not a fan of declinism, but it's a real thing, and it's seemingly inevitable. I just think that this society may just crash. It just may crash and burn, because it has the wrong priorities. You know what I mean? I don't think. And here's the thing. So one thing I'm thinking about in terms of the failures of foreign policy, right? In Afghanistan, it's 20 years war, is that it also points to domestic policy, and that this country, if it seeks to strengthen itself, it's going to have to change its entire domestic policy. You know what I'm saying? It's going to have to change its policy towards help Black men, if it wants to be strong. It's going to have to change its priorities. It's going to have to challenge these feminists. It's going to have to challenge these LGBTQ people. It's going to have to challenge all these social justice people. It's kind of like China. You look at China now, man. China's like, we're just going to suspend human rights indefinitely. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, because it's an idea. It's a philosophical idea, rights, or it's a philosophical idea. Okay. Yeah. And again, there's been a long list of philosophers who've basically been critical of Enlightenment thinking. They call it modernism or modernity. They've been critical of modernity, and they say, look, we need to go back to a period in time where freedom is not just perceived as negative liberty, because really there's actually no negative liberty that people here enjoy anyway. We think we do. Like, a way of life has actually been carved out for you. Okay. And when you begin to question that way of life, that's when people get upset at you. And they try to put you back and circumscribe you back into the way of life that's been carved out for you. Okay. But, right now, all I see is identity politics spiraling out of control.
Yeah.
Okay. And I see the middle class shrinking.
Yep.
I see like an avoidance of the conversation. So there's excesses on both, sides of the coin in American politics. I could point to the conservatives and all these austerity measures, which are nothing but cash grabs for a certain set of elite people who care nothing about the vast majority of the people in the United States. Okay. That's a problem. The financialization of the economy, and that's an issue. Okay. And the conservatives are going to have to bite the bullet on that.
Yeah.
And then these people on the left who want to destroy everything, who perceive everything in the world as oppression. Yeah. They're going to have to be pushed back against.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So there are excesses on both sides. Okay. Yeah. But we don't even have the ability to have conversations that are normal anymore.
You don't. No.
Because there is nothing normal anymore. So, that's why I try to stay out of politics because to me, when I talk about politics, I'm going to talk about it, beyond the scope and the range of contemporary American politics. I'm gonna start getting to the real stuff. Not, I'm not gonna talk about politicians.
There you go.
No, because even their policies, are narrow in their focus. And I'm gonna start talking about political scientists. I'm gonna start naming, the people who, develop policies that the politicians say that they're following. So, but I don't think people have really an actual stomach for that. So I kind of stay away from it. Maybe I ought to get into it. Y'all let me know what you think.
I get it. I understand, man. That's why, again, we're having this conversation, man, because I think we need greater and broader frames of reference. You know what I mean? To kind of think about things. And we live in a global world, globalized world, and everything touches us, in one way or another. And it's like when we talk about, if we're going to talk about, it's just like with the feminist stuff or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm looking at what the feminists are doing right now, and I'm looking at what just happened in Kabul, right? And I'm like, when you start measuring, I said, look at the claims that you all are making about patriarchy and oppression. I say, you all have it made here, you know what I mean, in relationship to, women under radical Islam. Okay, those jokers are purging. They are purging journalists. They are purging professors. They are purging educated women. They are purging anything that would challenge their sense of Islamic manhood. You know what I'm saying? And, these women are, sitting around here talking about microaggressions and all that kind of stuff, in the male gaze. All right. And these women on the other part of the world, some of them, they're being alienated from education. It's like, okay, you can only go to school up until the 5th grade, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? And so our priorities are off.
Yeah. And so it's a brother here, man, Infantry Skills, who said we need to go to southern towns. And I'm talking defeatist talking points. And, we need to do local politics. I agree that we need to do local politics, but you can't, getting black men together right now is like herding cats, bro. DJS said this a long time ago. Like, to get black men to sit down, see, the members of the Taliban can sit down and talk to each other and develop a strategy such to the extent to which they'll actually go destroy a fucking building. They'll hijack a plane and destroy a building. You can't get a Negro to sit down and make a documentary. I swear to God, man.
I know.
You can't give up. I'm like, I swear to God, you can't get black men to get together and do anything. I wish you could. Because every black man is going to be like, well, that ain't good enough for me. That's not, I don't think we should be moving in this direction. You get what I'm saying? So, because there is no tradition of black men doing anything or falling back on, other than in the past. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got the Nation of Islam, but I mean, for crying out loud, you got the black church. Okay, so you do have some institutions. You got fraternal organizations. Okay, and you got Masonic institutions and so on and so forth, right? You even got gangs. Even gang members will sit back and come together and do something. But you start talking to like the average black people, we're too tied into individualism. Like, you are not the boss of me. There's nothing that you can develop in relation to a plan that I'm going to commit myself to, and there are no consequences if you don't follow it. So if you say, we need to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, we need to do it, but what's my obligation to it beyond you saying we need to do it? There's nothing tethering my commitment. Nothing other than my own will, my own subjective desire. So if you don't do something and you're a member of the Taliban, it's just like you ain't putting in work for the gang and you're a Crip. Wait a minute, you ain't gonna put this work in? You said you was down with this. You get what I'm saying? So like, there's no commitment to anything other than to our own ability to look a certain way or to, you know, to present in a certain way. And, you know, this whole alpha shit, like even like I listen to, you know, like the content creators in the Black manosphere.
Yeah.
You know, like it's all about being high value. What the fuck is high value?
Yeah, I know.
And you know, like the whole point is, like I say, we need to get together and do something, and to pool our agency and to connect it together. I don't want to do that. Well, I can't make a man do anything, especially in a Western liberal society. I can't make you do anything. I can suggest something. If I give you something tangible to work on, either you're gonna work on it or you're not, or either I'm gonna work on it by myself. But if you say, well, what's the solution? I'm gonna say, well, what's your solution? What's your strategy? What have you developed? What have you done? What are you doing? And what impact or effect is it actually having? You get what I'm saying? Because a lot of guys, see, we engage in this hypercritical bullshit too much. And quite frankly, I'm tired of it. I feel like smacking niggas for this shit. You know, so, and the reason is because motherfuckers will tell you you ain't got a solution, but what the fuck you doing? Ain't no black man got a solution. In the United States, which one of us got the fucking solution? Does Clarence Thomas got the solution? Does Louis Farrakhan got the fucking solution? Did Huey P. Newton have a goddamn solution? Did Martin Luther King Jr. have a fucking solution? Does Larry Elder have the solution? Did Barack Obama have the solution? Which one of you fucking niggas got the solution? And I'm calling you to task.
Yeah.
I'm saying, which one of you niggas got the solution? And I'm just being honest about it.
I hear you, man.
And I'm talking directly to infantry skills. I got a show. You can come on my show anytime and talk to me straight up face to face. Because I'm tired of these dudes talking about academics, man. I am an academic. What other group of people denounce as academicians other than Negroes?
Yeah.
Which group of people, man?
Nobody else. No one else, man.
Which other group of people in the world do that?
No one else. No one else. That's a part of it. That's
I mean, like you got 100,000 Negroes that say that, okay, well, what's the solution? What is your solution, sir? What is yours? I'm curious. Give me a step-by-step 10-point bulletin plan on what we need to be doing.
There you go.
And let's see if it's effective. But even if you got a plan and you got a proposal and a solution, it ain't no guarantee that you're gonna get somebody to follow it.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So I just get tired. Like I gotta confront brothers like this, man. You know, because at some point I get tired of hearing this bullshit about what academicians doing and what they're saying. And what are you doing? What are you putting into effect?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's like bitch shit to me.
That's it.
I hate to say that, but it get to the point where, you know what I'm saying, like you got infantry skills, I got them too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, at the end of the day, it's about like what you putting into practice your damn self. Like, what are you doing for the community, your goddamn self?
There you go. Well, listen, man, we are 2 hours into this discussion, man. It's been lively and good and everything. And I don't want to take up too much of Gigi's time. And I know brothers got.
I know I went off, man. I'm sorry.
No, man, that's fine, man. That is absolutely fine, man. This space is free for us to talk, and that's why I had you here, man. That's why I wanted your off the chain energy.
Hey, man, you know my energy is off the chain. I'm not for that bitch ass shit though. You know what I'm saying? Like if you can be critical, but you know you can be respectful while you're being critical. Like what is it that you plan? Like don't tell me what I'm planning. You come up with the plan.
There you go.
Marcus Mosiah Garvey. You come up with the plan, Fred Hampton.
There you go. There you go.
You come up with the plan.
Listen, it's been good. We're gonna wrap this thing up, but I just want to thank the G with the PhD, the Green Gorilla, being a part of this show, and I'm glad you guys were here tonight. Y'all get the likes up, get the likes up, get the likes up. Y'all hit the Cash App, BMI, $BMI 3000, Ronald B. Neal PayPal. If you think this is meaningful to you, if you like these conversations talking about matters that are pertinent to the lives of Black men, we're talking about the world, man. Afghanistan. How many people are talking about Afghanistan in relationship to Black men in YouTube and across social media? How many people are making these connections, connecting the dots? So if you appreciate this content, you all support it in the Cash App and PayPal, and all you brothers who've given super chats. I appreciate you guys for your super chats. I really do. You guys, keep this thing going. You give me inspiration to do more of this. So thank you, Lee's Way, for your contribution earlier and everything. But we're gonna bring this to the close, and I want the G with the PhD to just give us some concluding thoughts as we wrap up Friday Night Live.
Yeah, we were brought here to talk about Afghanistan, man. That's all we were really actually brought here to do, and to weigh in on what we think about it. And at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying, everybody ain't gonna lay down. What Black men might lay down, everybody ain't gonna lay down. Sorry, we just said it already. You know, and if we're not laying down, then what does that look like? Going off on each other on YouTube, being critical, hypercritical each other on YouTube. Like all we doing is having a discussion. What is the solution? Offer your own proposal, and then we can move forward with that. Like at the end of the day, everybody in the world is not going to sit back and lay down and tolerate the West's foolishness, their violence, their exploitation, economically and politically. People are going to resist. That's at the end of the day. And it might come in the form of violence. It might come in the form of subterfuge, political intrigue. It's going to happen. The question is, what do we do? What, as Black men, what are we doing? Arguing with each other over the most trifling bullcrap. So at the end of the day, man, we got to get ourselves together. You know? So I'm waiting to see, like, I'm inviting the brother on my show to tell me what his solutions are. I want to hear your plan. So I'll be on tomorrow. I'd like to see him there. I'll go on at 12 o'clock, 12 p.m.
Good. Y'all heard that. 12 p.m. 12 p.m.
12 p.m. I'll be on. So come holler at the G with the PhD, man, so we can go ahead and have these conversations and get this out the way.
There you go, and get this, all the sound effects and the gunshots and everything and the bombs exploding.
And you can come too, Dr. Neal, if you want to have this discussion, you know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man, if you got some free time. But, you know.
I appreciate it, brother. I appreciate it. But again, man, thank you, man, for joining us for this evening, man. And you brothers, I appreciate you guys for coming through and supporting the chat, man. Yeah, so you all still stay alert and stay tuned for the next stream. We are signing off. You guys enjoy your Friday night. Peace out.
Enjoy your Friday night, man. Peace out, y'all.
All right.